Here's how to kitbash and paint some Orc Mareens. Mezgeik recently released these ultra cool Orc Mareens, and I couldn't resist printing and painting some. They'd fit in with a lot of different games. One game that has piqued my interest recently is Modulorica. Perfect timing. I wanted to do a few little conversions in Blender. Like this sergeant got a cool Buzz power arm from Station Forge, and a hand flamer pistol that I scaled up from Kyoshineku miniatures. I find the best way to properly get the scale right and to figure out posing is to just bring in all the parts you'll use and see what looks right. The other Blender kitbashing I wanted was to make some open-faced helmets. I was pretty confident in removing the face masks because Mezgeik's models typically separate by loose parts extremely well. I selected a head, went into edit mode, pressed P, and then separated by loose parts. Then I deleted the parts I didn't want. This didn't work with every head because some of them were lacking faces, and I had to copy some teeth over, but I'm super happy with how this worked. A little tip for printing is, if possible, do the editing with loose parts to the pre-supported files. That way you don't have to support them again. I printed a bunch of the Marine bits out, and then started assembling. I did a few physical conversions as well. For one of the orcs, I misplaced the top of his backpack, so I filled it with texture paste, and then planted a few mushrooms. A pair of legs had a little break in it, so I added some screen door to act as rebar and armor. Another orc needed an underslung grenade launcher, so I cut off the end of a pipette and set it in a little square of green stuff. And finally added little rhinestones made for nail art to act as rivets. I made a grenade bandolier with a semi-cured strand of green stuff. And superglued on some 3D printed grenades. With all the kitbashing and converting done, it was time to paint. They started with a zenithal highlight. Kinda cool news, I'm now an affiliate with Monument Hobbies. So if you want the airbrush primer that I use the link in the description, and use code iPaintSmallThings for 10% off store-wide. I've been using Pro Acryl Neutral Gray Primer for a hot minute now, and have never had a single clog. I sprayed up from below with a red ink to make the shadows warmer when applying glazes. In real life, everyone's skin tones are slightly different, and I assume orcs are no different. I grabbed as many greens as I had, thinned them with water or paint thinner, and got to glazing. My favorite green paints probably ended up being Sapling Green from Huge Minis, and Citadel's Castellan Green. Let me know what you guys use for orc skin. I have a feeling I'll be painting a lot more green skin in the future. Then, to paint the pants, I used Panzer Ace's Dark Rubber. The belts were burnt umber. Then it was time to color the armor. I used ultramarine blue contrast paint. I wasn't hugely impressed with how the contrast paint performed, and also when I tried to wipe away some that got on an orc's arm, it stripped the paint all the way down to the resin, which is frustrating. I ended up trying to make the stripped patch look like a big open wound, but still annoying. I painted the insides of mouths, the gun receivers, and the sergeant's helmet with flat red. Then, I painted the metal bits with either metal color steel or copper. This is where I started to weather the armor and to make some unpainted panels. I highlighted the armor with ultramarine blue mixed with azure and made little chips with pure azure. Also, this is what it looks like when I don't wear contacts. Then, I painted the eyes white and prepared areas for checkerboarding and hazard stripes by base coating white. Luckily, since these guys are orcs, you don't really have to be perfect with your lines. Messy can look really good. A while ago I made these custom transfer sheets with checkerboarding on it. So for one of the bigger areas, I cut out a rough shape, soaked it in water for a minute, applied it to the mini, and brushed on some microsole to soften the transfer and to make sure it laid flat against the mini. I didn't have small enough squares for some areas and was too afraid to try to paint on the squares with a brush, so I used this Gundam marker to draw on the squares. This is probably going to be my go-to method going forward for making checkers and clean lines, especially where a transfer wouldn't fit. I painted the lips, teeth, horns, and elbows with Rakarth flesh, and went over any wraps, teeth, horns, and nails with Skeleton Horde contrast paint. Then, I painted the grenades with refractive green, which was a green I hadn't used in any of the orc skin. The mushrooms were then painted red and orange. With the orc lads base coated, it was time for washes and weathering effects. I washed all the skin with Athonian camo shade and added a little Reichland flesh shade to the lips, elbows, and hands to give them a little warmth. All the metal and cloth was washed with Nuln oil. I used Dirty Down weathering effects to weather all the metal. I made sure the bottles were well shaken and added it anywhere I thought would either look cool or needed a little color. It also helped create separation between the parts of the model where the blue and silver was too messy and visually confusing. After that dried, I took some silver and roughly edge highlighted the rusty metal. In my opinion, this really adds some realism. I then added little lines to the lips and painted all the teeth and nails with white. I painted the eyes with red contrast paint. Then I made little freckles on the orc's skin with the green ink. Finally, I panel lined with Nuln oil to help further create separation between parts. I also wanted to try a technique I saw from Frozen Fire Arts on Instagram for making flames using water effects. I first painted on some object source lighting on the gun. Then I took Vallejo water effects and made a shape of a flame. After that was dry, I took some transparent yellow ink and tinted the flame. I'm super pleased with how this turned out. Make sure to watch Frozen Fire Arts tutorial and give them some love. Super smart idea. And with that, the Orc Mareens were done. If you want some ultra cool armored orc boys for yourself, make sure to check out Mezgeik. If you don't have a printer, use the link in the description to buy physical prints from Only Games, and use the code iPaintSmallThings15 for 15% off. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, feel free to like and subscribe. Make sure to check out my Buy Me a Coffee if you're trying to support the cause and get your name on a wall in graffiti. Comment down below with any feedback or suggestions. Alright, bye-bye.